Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Alright, so we did your interview before about addiction. Now we're doing one about domestic abuse.
Yes.
So go ahead and tell us your name, your age, where you're from.
Coarie, 34, and I currently live in Columbus, Mississippi.
Okay, so to you, what is your definition of domestic abuse?
My definition of domestic abuse would be mental and physical. It doesn't just have to be, being punched in the face. It can be, when someone is get into your head, they tell you that you're not good enough, that, you're not pretty enough, that you're not enough for anything, just the gaslighting.
Okay, so for you, you would consider yourself a victim?
No.
Okay.
I do not consider myself a victim because the relationship that we're going to be talking about, it wasn't just one-sided with the abuse. I played a big part in abusing him as well, mentally and physically.
Okay. Give me a time frame. When did this happen?
That relationship was from like 2015 to the very beginning of 2018.
Okay. What was going on in your life? Like, where were you at this point?
I was everywhere. That was a very, very chaotic part of my life. Probably the most chaotic part of my life. Basically homeless. We just traveled all over the place. We were, doing drugs, drinking, and just, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess.
Okay. How did it start? Did you see any red flags? What was going on?
Yeah, the red flags, I knew that he had mental issues. He's a veteran. He served a couple of deployments, really bad PTSD. And there were, the way he talked about his ex-girlfriends, they were crazy, but it was like, some had, these people were terrified of him. And the person that I knew, the guy that I met when I was a teenager was not the guy that I met in my 30s. He was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, basically. And it really just started with, like, he didn't want me to have my own cell phone. I was fine, I didn't care about that. But then it turned to, like, making me believe that nobody else cared about me but him. Not even my family, my friends, people were just using me. And, looking back on it now, it's just absurd because, I know that my family and friends love me. But at that time, I was so, I would say, like, my brain was just not in a good place.
Right, so that leads me to this question. I've met your dad. I've met your brother. So with good role models in your life, and I know you have them, how do you, this gets me sometimes, like, how do you get involved with a guy like that? How does that happen?
I was, at that point, looking for an escape. I was so miserable with what was happening in my life at that time. I didn't have custody of my children. I was just starting to dabble into my main drug of choice, which was meth. I was drinking. And, when my kids got taken, I felt like my purpose in life, my reason for breathing had just been ripped away from me. And I wanted to die. But it's like no matter what I did, I didn't die. So I just needed to escape. I had to escape what was going on up here. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew what was happening was wrong. But I almost didn't care.
How did you meet this guy? Like, what?
Well, we met as teenagers.
Okay.
dated for like 2 years, you know, the first boy I fell in love with type of thing. And then we split up and we both just went different ways and hadn't seen each other, hadn't heard, you know, each other's name in, God, probably almost 15 years. And lovely Facebook. You know, I got a message from him one day and he's like, hey, oh my gosh, like hadn't seen you in forever. Do you want to meet up? And I'm like, yeah, why not? You know, what's it gonna hurt? And if I could have known all the chaos that was gonna ensue, I would have never replied.
So then give me some context. What happened?
Well, he came to my house and it was basically like he never left. You know, when he walked up, I was like, oh my goodness, like, I've missed you. Like, where have you been? But I was so lonely that I think that he was somebody familiar. I knew that he wasn't going to judge me for anything I was doing. You know, if I wanted to go sit in the back room and smoke some meth, he was going to be like, okay, I'll do it with you. So, you know, it just started out us just, you know, having fun at first. And that was my escape. And I clinched onto that. There was, you know, very early on, like I told him, I'm like, look, like my life is chaos right now. You probably don't want anything to do with it. I understand if you just don't want to talk. And he's like, you're crazy. Like, you know, I care about you. I'm not going to, you know, just leave you in this. So there was one night that I was going to kill myself. And I took my gun, you know, I had a 9mm and I stuck it in my mouth and I pulled the trigger. But I didn't know that he had taken all the bullets out of my gun. So when that happened, like something happened in my brain and I'm like, oh my gosh, he saved my life, you know? And it was just sick. It was so sick. This insane codependency that just formed. And we just started going nuts with the drug use, the drinking, you know, and like I said earlier, it started with, you know, I didn't have my own phone. And it was a lot of, I feel like the manipulation, it started, he wanted me to see everybody else as a bad person. Everybody else was bad except for him. And he was trying to save me from all of these bad people. And in my mind, I couldn't, you know, comprehend that this was bad, that, you know, this was wrong. I just looked at it as, here's this guy trying to protect me. Finally, someone is trying to look out for me. And it wasn't that at all. You know, it started out where, you know, it was, we'd get in these huge fights, like screaming matches. And, you know, the first time that he hit me in the face, I was kind of taken aback. But I was like, oh, he didn't mean to. You know, he's broken in his head from what he went through. He would never hurt me. So this happened several times, you know, just the hits here and there, you know, the shoving. And then the mental aspect of it came in. You know, you know, I have a fear of abandonment. And he would leave me places. You know, I didn't have a car, I didn't have a phone, I didn't have any of that. Everything was his. So, you know, we're traveling all over the United States and, you know, he would leave me at rest areas in the middle of the night. He left me in the middle of the desert one time. You know, just, it was like he knew all my deep-seated fears and he would use those against me. But I got to a point where with the physical stuff, I just had enough. Not enough to leave, but I was like, you know what? You want to fight me? I'm going to fight you. And, you know, the best way I could explain it was like if Chuck Liddell and Ronda Rousey were in a meth-fueled relationship, that's what it was. Because we would, like, beat the hell out of each other And then, an hour later, it's like, oh, I love you so much. It's insane. Hearing it all coming out of my mouth it just baffles me.
How long did that go on?
For the entire relationship, a little over 2 years.
Why didn't you leave?
That's the question that's probably the hardest to answer. The best way for me to say it is that I didn't know how to. There's several factors in there. One, I had nowhere to go. Two, that sick codependency, in my mind, I had caused myself to believe that, I believed that everything that was happening, I deserved it for one reason or another. All the things that I've done in my past, this, I deserve this. Why should I have any different? Why should I have any better? I had nowhere to go. I believed that nobody wanted to be around me, that nobody cared enough that if I told them what was happening and that I needed to get away from it, that they would help me. And I was, we had stopped doing meth at a certain point, but I was still drinking very heavily. And I knew that I couldn't drink the way that I was drinking with anybody else. Nobody would have put up with it. So there's several factors in there of why I chose to stay.
How did you finally get away?
It escalated to a point of he almost killed me. We had been drinking for days. I mean, I don't even know. We weren't getting high on meth anymore, but we were drinking very heavily. And we got in this huge fight. We're at a hotel, and I was finally like, you know what? You need to leave. I'm done with this. I'm not putting up with it anymore. And I picked up the phone to call security to get him escorted out, and he lost it. He picked me up by my neck. Well, first he ripped the phone out of the wall, picked me up by my neck, slammed me down, and choked me until I passed out. I woke up to him just beating the crap out of my face. I think the only thing that stopped him from killing me was somebody must have heard it, and this lady was just beating on the door. And as soon as he heard her beating on the door, he just took out.
Okay, so you've gotten home after this?
Well, it took me a couple of days to get home. I was in Nevada. Luckily I had met a couple there that, they knew how broken I was. But I think even they didn't really know how to help me. So I managed to get myself to their house. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I knew I couldn't stay there, but I didn't know where to go. So I called a friend of mine that I knew that just no questions asked, no judgment. I called and I said, hey, I know you said this was going to happen. Please don't say I told you so, but I really need to get home, and he bought me a plane ticket and had me home the next day.
So now you're home, and this is in the past. What was life like right after?
Oh, it was a disaster. I was still, I almost feel like my brain just cracked. I couldn't sleep. I barely ate. I would manipulate anybody I could into getting me alcohol, just to try to stop feeling the way that I was feeling, because part of me missed him. And I know that sounds insane, but it's true, I tried to go back to therapy, but I was drinking so heavily that, nothing my therapist told me was resonating. It got to a point where I couldn't distinguish my dreams from reality. It was like I was constantly reliving that moment of, losing him, almost losing my life. And then it turned into, what the hell are you doing? How did you allow this to happen? So it went from, you know, somebody else causing, you know, these mental and emotional craziness in my mind to me causing it, because I didn't understand what happened. I couldn't wrap my brain around everything I had just gone through. And so I just drank and drank and drank and drank until I couldn't drink anymore.
Do you feel like it affects your personal and romantic relationships today?
Yes. I try really hard not to let it affect it. You know, when I first got back from Nevada, you know, I had a guy friend of mine who was just strictly a platonic friend, and you know, he would try to get me out of the house and, you know, take me places just to get me out of where I was. And you know, I didn't notice it at the time, but he told me later, like, you know, Coarie, I went to like touch your shoulder while I was talking to you, and you damn near like jumped out of your skin. You know, I couldn't stand anyone getting close to me, metaphorically and literally. You know, I still have nightmares. You know, it was huge for me to get into this relationship that I'm currently in, because I had a lot of trust issues, and I had a fear of, you know, is this going to happen again? You know, because it always seems like things can be so good, but then that other shoe's going to drop and it's just going to turn to shit. And so, you know, the trust issues with it, I try to not let it affect it, but it does to a degree. I feel like I've gotten a lot better, but it's a work in progress.
So how do you heal from your trauma? What kind of, you know, person do you share your life with, both romantically and friends and that kind of thing?
Like, how do I heal from it?
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be a very long, ongoing process. You know, I'm over most of it. You know, the treatment center that I went to for drugs and alcohol, they had a trauma therapist that I can't thank her enough for, you know, the help that she gave me, because in the beginning I was heartbroken, you know, and I know that's crazy, but I was very heartbroken by the entire thing. But after my sessions with her, it turned to relief. Relief that I don't have to live like that anymore. Relief that I know I deserve better, and I will never put up with that again, because nobody deserves that, you know, man or woman. And then I'm very open about it now. You know, I was so ashamed of it before, and you know, now my romantic relationship, you know, when these crazy thoughts pop up in my head, it's very hard for me to express it. Sometimes it has to be pulled out of me. But it's important for me to vocalize what's going on up here, because if I don't, it's going to fester and I'm going to explode, and I'm going to end up ruining a really good thing.
What kind of people do you stay away from certain kind of people now?
Yes. I surround myself with positive people. I surround myself with people in recovery. You know, if I know that someone is, and this may sound hypocritical, but you know, if I know someone's doing the same things that I was doing, if you're just stuck there, I don't know what to do for you. You know, if you reach out and say, hey, like, I know that you might be able to help me with this. Will you help me? Absolutely. I will bend over backwards to help you. But if you're just comfortable in that chaos, I can't put myself back there. You know, there's been situations where, you know, people from his past have showed up in my present, and I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. You know, he's contacted me, and I've had to shut it down because I can't allow myself to go back there, because if I do, I'm gonna end up relapsing. I'm gonna end up depressed. I'm gonna end up miserable. I'm gonna end up feeling sorry for myself, and I can't do that today. You know, I've come way too far to go backwards.
So what do you mean? What have you gained out of being away from abusive relationships? Out of, you know?
I've gained my self-worth. For a long time, I just thought that I was way down here, that I didn't deserve anything good in life, that I would never have anyone really love me. I had a very skewed perception of what love was. You know, this relationship has been the first time that I feel has been healthy, and you know, I actually know what it feels like to be loved and to give love, and I've never had that before, and it's incredible.
What would you tell yourself if you could go back and see that person that was on the road? Gangsta.
That you're stronger than that. That you don't have to live like that. That you can have a good life. That things do get better. That you don't have to live in chaos. You know, I got so comfortable in chaos, and today I avoid it at all costs.
Is there an easy way to step away from chaos?
I don't think so. I think that just as hard as you fight while you're in chaos, you have to fight just as hard to get out of it, because it's not easy to step away from something like that. You know, there's so many people that are like, oh, well, you know, why didn't you just leave? Unless you're in that situation, you have no idea what happens. It's a lot of manipulation. And it's scary. It's very scary. You know, I've looked at a lot of statistics, you know, like, and I don't want to just say that this is to women, because men, it happens just as much to men. You know, like, I think something like 4 women a day are killed by an intimate partner. That's terrifying. I think it's like 50-50 for men and women have been emotionally provoked by an intimate partner. If you look up the abuse ratios for men and women, it's terrifying. You know, because it happens just as much to men as it does to women.
So if you met someone currently in that situation that was being abused, or was even on the other side of that, what would you tell them?
If they were being abused?
Sure.
Do what you have to do to get away from it. It's not your fault. You know, you can, even if you feel like you have nobody and nothing, there are ways to get away from it. You know, had I known about the resources that I know about today, I feel like it would have been a lot different. You know, there are hotlines you can call, there are shelters, you know, and I know nobody wants to go to a shelter, but if it's your life, or sleeping in a shelter for a couple weeks until you can figure something out, go to that shelter. You know, life does get better, and you don't have to stay in that.
Anything else you on your mind that you want to share about that topic?
No, I mean, just, you know, I hope that we'll have, you know, links to hotlines and, you know, resources that, you know, are out there. You know, even if you can call a fire station and say, hey, I'm being abused, can you help me? And those guys are going to help you. You know, there's help out there, there's resources out there, there are people, you know, people like me that you can reach out to and say, hey, I don't know what to do while I'm in this situation, can you help me?
Google it.
Google it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.